committee meeting to order. Is there any review or additions to the agenda? Seeing none, we will just go down to the first agenda item, which are some updates. And I will quickly do the PSRC, KRCC update. PSRC has identified that the 2021 and 2022 funding cycles were underprogrammed. So they are putting out, there's additional money, and Kitsap will receive approximately $900,000 to apply to our contingency list. Now, I know the top of that contingency list is the port project, which I think is in round numbers about $2.5 million. And then the second item on that list is the Kingston 104 project, and that's about $5 million. So that 900,000 may go down to smaller projects on that contingency list, but that'll be coming before our TAC meeting, or the KRCC TAC fairly soon. Also, PSRC is going to be holding transportation alternative funding competition this year. They will have about $13.5 million to allocate for 22, 23, and 24. I'm not sure yet if that's strictly a regional competition or if part of that is a countywide competition. KRCC staff had recommended putting all of it to contingency list, but the Transpol folks said, no, we felt it needed to be a competitive effort. And they had $4.5 million for 4 years. And the $4.5 million will be going to contingency list. So Kitsap may get part of that too. And I know they have a few transportation alternative programs on their contingency list that may they may get more money. So that's kind of cool. The KRCC, the Kitsap Regional Coordinating Council, is in the midst of updating the countywide planning policies. And the transportation element right now is under review by the TransTac committee. The committee Mark sits on is reviewing that. So we would like to bring a report to this group at our February meeting to outline what changes Port Orchard's going to support or promote for the CPP updates. And at our council meeting this evening, I will go over more of the countywide update plan for everyone. But the important part for us to know is that we'll have an opportunity for input on the transportation element, and PSRC's got some money out there that will be awarded in Kitsap. So all the jurisdictions will be eligible, but right now you're going to have to be on that contingency list, except for the TAP money. Anyway, that's what I have. Does the mayor or Mark have anything on Gorst?
We'll have a discussion item about the ILA this evening. It's on the agenda, and my concern, and Charlie's going to have an opinion on it tonight, is the I think it's called Section 5, which has to do with the funding, and it calls it. There's some soft language in there, but I don't know that it's soft enough for us. It says that we're in the tier for 20 to I don't recall. So we'll discuss it tonight. I'm not completely comfortable with the language, and Charlie, when at first glance wasn't either, but she'll have an opinion for us this evening.
Okay.
Other than that, it's good. It's just I don't want to obligate us to something in perpetuity.
That's correct. And the other thing that I'm hearing from you, Rob, is that the Gorst Coalition is still in the formation stage and still getting all of their coordinating or their structure together before they actually start moving forward with looking for funding or design work or anything. Is
Yeah,
that correct?
thank you. That is accurate. Bremerton has agreed to be the fiduciary agent. So that's been solved. I know the Kitsap Transit Board, well, the agreement isn't in its final form. We've agreed that we're gonna support it, and transit will match whoever the largest contributor is, upwards to 50,000. So there are some folks that are gonna that have more resources than us, and it impacts larger. Not that it doesn't impact us, but our budget currently has $5,000 in it, which is far less than the line that they say we're at. So,
Okay. Well, we'll hear more tonight. So our next agenda item is the Bethel.
One question for you.
Please.
So on the Transportation Alternatives Program, we're not thinking that Port Orchard would submit anything, are we? We really don't have any projects that.
I don't know. We put that out there so that you guys could think about it. Remembering that it is federal funding, and it's 13.5 million, and that's for the entire region. Yeah. And I don't know whether it's going to be a regional competition or if there's going to be some countywide process involved.
Mark, do you have any thoughts on that?
No, not really.
What I do want to say is when we get down to the CPPs and later on this year, when the transportation committees at KRCC start working on criteria for project selection for future funding cycles, there are some issues that I would like to bring forward to this committee to see how you would or would not support. I think jurisdictions should be limited to how many competitive projects it can be forward. I would also like to see jurisdictions be able to bring forward projects that would just sit on a contingency list and not look for immediate funding. And if that were the case, rather than us competing at the last cycle, when we had agreed we would not, we could have brought something forward just to sit on a contingency list. And then if there's extra money, maybe we could get some. Anyway, those are just some thoughts, but those are for another day.
Okay, well, I just wanted to say that I think, I mean, you could come to this committee and say, this is what I'm thinking. At the end of the day, you're really taking it to Transpol and then ultimately the board and then over to KRCC Transpol, because you're talking about moving heaven and earth, as they say. So good luck with that.
It doesn't hurt to plant seeds. Other things, when we start talking about the project selection, I think we need to weigh in on giving some sort of weight to jurisdictions that have transportation benefit district and impact fees that are already using the tools in their toolbox, because some of the jurisdictions in our region do not. So yeah. Bremerton does not have impact fees. So
interesting.
Yeah. And the counties are only $700. So anyway, those are things that we can just talk about in the future. I didn't want to, kidnap this meeting for that discussion. We can do that down the road. What we do want to talk about is that Bethel-Lincoln intersection. And Chris, I'll turn the next part of the agenda over to you.
Okay, thank you, Beck. So our plan is to award the professional services agreement to Skillings on February 9th. So I wanted to get the committee up to speed with where we've been and my thoughts on this. So we interviewed 3 different teams: SJC Alliance, that had done the study on Bethel, Reed Middleton, who has also very good roundabout designers, and Skillings. And we ended up, Jay helped on the selection committee, and thank you for supporting that effort. But we ended up with Skillings. We felt they were the most qualified team in terms of our schedule and working with WashDOT and on the federal aid side of things, and working with our community as well. based on the input I had from the interview panel. So I've had some history with Mike Horton, who's the project manager for Skillings. He lives just outside the city limits here. And I worked with him on a recent Roundabout project over at Bainbridge before I left there. So that's good. That'll be nice for me. I have that kind of communication all set up with their offices. So I've got this little picture of what when we go to figure out the layout for the roundabout, we're highly constrained by a number of things at this location. First of all, we want to make sure we take advantage of the fact that the city's purchased the 2 properties to the west. And we don't want to get into entanglements with right away with the property over here where the trailer park situation. We want to make sure we keep the impacts to the wetlands less than a 1/4 acre, because that'll allow the permitting to go forward on a more reasonable time frame. And we also have fiscal constraints. This is kind of it's really not a good match situation for us. We don't have really good leverage with grants. We have only 1.5 million in grants compared to the amount of city money it's going to take. This is around a $2.7 million project. So my thought on that is if it gets too expensive, we just want to defer to future phases rather than, because our impact fees are so precious to being able to do other projects going forward. We don't want to have all our eggs in this basket, I don't think. So we are constrained by the dollars in this as well. And so I'm trying to keep this project simple so that we can keep the costs down and make our schedule. Part of that is get the schedule to work within the 2-year time frame that we're roughly committed to. We can delay it longer, but that's what we committed to when we submitted the application. So well, I think
Wasn't there a concept with potentially a peanut that
there was. We looked at that a little bit. Transportation Solutions, who's our, does a lot of traffic work for the city, and they're also our Roundabout.
That looks like a racetrack, not a peanut, but
yeah, and they were concerned about the movements for trucks with the peanut. They thought it got a little tight and it would have to get too wide, and then the cars would go too fast.
okay.
So they were looking at this kind of oval concept. So we're thinking something more along these lines, because we can construct it primarily outside of the existing road, which should drop our cost by at least 10% on the construction side, really keep our costs down. It also, as we elongate this thing, we get a little bit more constrained in getting a design that works well and isn't impactful on the neighboring properties. We've got a little bit more to work with this design. We also end up being closer to this intersection. We want some distance between here and here for safety purposes. So I think we're pretty much at this point, with the budget we have and the constraints we have, committed to something pretty much along these lines.
And I was a big advocate of the peanut initially until I started hearing about the increased costs associated with that. But I think that this configuration, because the other configuration that put the roundabout in about the same spot, brought Lundberg from Harold much further to the north, and it was just wasting space. This configuration actually allows potential of some property that the city will own that could sell and put back into the street fund. And so it's this, and it gets us away from Mitchell, as Chris mentioned. That works better. The Shirkanes work on this. And the other thing with this, in this plan, it's out of the frame, but we would then take the Mitchell Y out of the equation and put a cul-de-sac at the end of that, so that the church parking lot, the mobile home park, and that little business, there it is, number 2, but that all continues just to operate as it's operating today. We just take all the traffic through the roundabout and then look at the stop controlled intersection at Lincoln and Mitchell. We even looked at doing a little compact roundabout there, but I don't know if that's going to be needed. But Chris, we do need to look at that if we're going to put that cul-de-sac at the end of Mitchell.
So we really don't have the budget for that. But what I'm looking at are these two alternatives here, where we could either do a one-way going northbound on Mitchell for a segment and then have a stop controlled intersection, or we could cut it off completely and have a stop controlled intersection. So those are the two things. And these, these are going to be pretty impactful to the nearby property owners. And they're the kind of thing that we kind of want to make sure we get good community buy-in, because it's going to be a big change. And the roundabout will be a roundabout of some fashion, but these would have slightly different kinds of impacts for the community.
Why would the Mitchell cul-de-sac be preferred over a one-way reorientation of Mitchell?
Just because you've got that, for me, I mean, you've got that business that's that, I don't know what it is, chiropractor or something.
Eyeglasses.
Eyeglasses. So if you make it a one-way, then you've got this kind of strange, it's a two-way up to a point and then it ends. And so I think it's problematic. The problem with having it as this, doing the cul-de-sac is now you've just kind of transferred the intersection problem from Bethel and Lincoln to Mitchell and Lincoln. So we're getting into not design detail, but we do need to look at the pros and cons of all these issues. But I do know that there's a number of ingress egress off the church parking lot existing off of Mitchell. You have all that undeveloped property there to the southeast. And I think you're going to have inherent issues if you just make that a one-way, and we might end up with potential just compensation because we're going to affect the access of that eyeglass place and stuff. So we got to look at it, look at it closely.
It's kind of more the neighborhood context.
Speaking from someone who drives that on a regular basis, I use that all the time, and I use it as one way going north. I never use that intersection at Bethel now. I avoid that, but I always use the one way, which would be going north. So rather than the cul-de-sac as a user, I would prefer the one way.
Okay.
Right.
So at this point, we're not trying to commit to either of these, but these are the ones we can afford. And I think we'll focus most of our public involvement on this aspect of it, because the other aspect of it is more constrained by cost and all the environmental constraints that we have and the functionality. So anyway, that's where our level of thinking is today. As far as the schedule, we're trying to get this ready to advertise by February of 2022, which is just a year away. So that's a pretty tall order, considering we have the wetlands issue and the Section 106 stuff with and the core permit to get. It's a really short time frame for that. So I'm looking to accelerate the schedule by committing to having the consultant optimize the roundabout design ahead of the public input. We'll of course be able to work with the neighbors as we start working more with those relationships there to tweak the design. But as far as just optimizing the layout, because I don't think there's a lot of decision points on that for the community, and that'll get us out of the gate quicker on all the environmental permitting that we need to do, and give us a chance to be better off from a schedule and a budget standpoint. So one aspect of this, the other aspect of the project is on the financial side. So we have this gift from the city safety program, but we're a little out of order on our tip. So we're pulling that in off the 7 to 20 year tip and putting that ahead now of we're going to have to defer other projects. So the other projects would be the Bethel Phase 1 and then the Anderson Hill non-motorized improvements. And the thought is we would want to see, how we do with our impact fees as far as the rate that we're acquiring new impact fees going forward before we commit to those two projects. So, maybe later in the year we'll understand the financial situation a little bit better and then commit to moving forward on designs on those other projects. But until that, we're pretty much have all our transportation impact fees in this one project. So that's a pretty big decision for council to make. I think we have to be a little bit flexible on we don't know ahead of time, and we can't just make all of our projects match the grant criteria that's out there and score the highest. So we kind of have to see where we land and be a little bit flexible to deliver the program that you've all put out there as the goal for the long term.
So we talked about this at length at our project meeting last week, and it's just pausing on these other, tapping the brakes or pausing on these other projects to see what revenue we get. And we don't want to spend all this money on this design and then not be able to take advantage of the grant if construction starts to slow down and we don't get all the impact fees that we thought. So we're just going to kind of probably wait till next year to see where things fall out when this goes out to bid, and making sure that we've got enough dollars in hand to be able to perform on this.
And we'll continue to submit grant applications for the other projects. We have another round of TIB Urban Arterials Program opportunities here this year, and so we'll resubmit for. I'm going to take the Bethel and Salmonberry project and try to cut that down a little bit. One of the input we got was we were asking for too much money. So we're hoping we'll be, I think that should be a pretty competitive project based on the feedback I had. I'm not as sure about Anderson and Old Clifton, how competitive that will be, but we've got that all prepared. We can take another shot at that. And if that doesn't work this time around, then we have the KRCC, PSRC opportunity next year. And that's typically more of a little bit of a peanut butter effect going on, and we're due to get a project. So we can probably position ourselves to fund that project next year.
Yeah, we have to make a decision if we want to federalize a project that size. The other thing I wanted to mention is on the 9th of February, we'll be taking to council accepting this project's construction funding at $1.5 million grant. It's just accepting through the agreement, and then also a street lighting study. We're not obligating that money at this time. We're just going to basically say we're going to accept the grant, but that doesn't mean that that doesn't compel us to have to obligate the money. That action is just basically accepting the award and moving ahead with it. So.
But we do want council to commit our resources, our TIF funding, delivering this roundabout project at Bethel Lincoln. They don't want to go through design and then, not have you made that consideration and commitment, because that would be a waste of our resources.
Yeah,
Right.
no, I know that.
We want a commitment now to do the design,
Right.
and to accept the grant, but we're not obligating the grant for construction yet.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're not on the hook to pay the money back if we don't do the project or anything like that. But we want to make sure that's the direction council wants to go, because we don't want to spend a bunch of money on designing something that's not going to get built. So we're committing most of the impact fee funds that we have today and a little bit of the funds that we're expecting to come in this year to being able to complete this project.
Right. I just want to make it clear that we're not actually obligating the money on the 9th. We're just accepting the grant.
Yeah, but I want to add that I want to support what Chris is saying, that, this is a $500,000 investment into this design. So far we've had all heads nodding from council in the previous discussions, and the mayor's supportive of it. So I think Chris is just getting that further reassurance that the council wants us to redirect the allocation for this project, knowing it might be another $1.3 million we have to come back to pay for out of potentially transportation impact fee revenue or some other source.
Correct.
Yeah.
At this point in time, I don't have any issues with it, and I think this project needs to move forward.
Scott, do you have any input on it?
No, I think we're headed in the right direction.
Okay.
Okay, so Jackie, how do I get out of this particular? Oh, here we go. Screen sharing, stop share, or new share.
Yeah, sorry, I was muted. I was sitting here giving you directions and I was muted.
I want to go to my photographs here.
Yeah, you should have a new share and it will give you a bunch of screens to choose from.
There we go. Okay. So on to the Sydney Avenue.
Chris, we're still seeing the Bethel roundabout.
Oh, you are.
Yes.
Stop share.
Yeah, and now do it again, just start over again with it, with a share.
There we go. See the new picture?
Yes, picture of, looks like Kitsap and Sydney.
It is.
Okay.
All right, so I've been doing I'm probably about 2/3 of the way through having the design for the Sydney Avenue sewer repair put together. I just need to polish up the specs and get the bid package together. But we've been adding scope to the project. So I just want to bring everybody up to speed with that. The original scope was to do the sewer repair, which is partway up the hill here at the alley, complete the lateral, redo the manhole, center of the intersection here. It's a failed manhole, it needs to be replaced. And then line the sewer between here and the next intersection up, I guess that's Dwight. So that work is going to be about $158,000 plus tax, plus contingency. But we also have over where the sign is here, the bus stop sign, the catch basin there, the road's settled a little bit, or something's happened that's blocking the storm sewer. So we want to repair that. That's going to be $4,000. And then in addition to that, we'll be doing ADA upgrades for this intersection. I've got a design where we'll flatten out the approaches a little bit so that they're 2% cross slope and put in new ramps on all four corners. And that'll bring it into ADA compliance while we're in here. We're already going to be doing concrete work and paving work. So we have the subcontractors we need to do the ADA stuff. So it makes sense to pick that up. Now we wouldn't absolutely have to do that. I could also limit the project to just the sewer element. The other one that's been thrown in the mix is we received one of our kind of repeat offenders as far as complaints on the ADA side is the intersection of Dwight and Harbor. Is it Harborview?
It's DeKalb
Harrison.
and Harrison.
DeKalb and Harrison. Sorry. And I've got a picture of that, and I can show you what that's about. Okay, there we go. Get out of that one.
Piece of unopened right of way that doesn't have a sidewalk across, and it's by a park.
No, wrong one.
It's around the corner from this project.
How much does the ADA retrofit add to that last intersection?
I don't have it broken up by that, but the entire amount of the ADA stuff is 154,000.
Is this one of your ADA complaint spots that you mentioned?
The one I'm about to show you is, yeah. Okay, so here we go. Share screen. And this.
And Kitsap and Sydney is pretty heavily traveled with pedestrians. That's not the best picture. From the other direction would have been better, but.
Okay, but you are seeing it.
You are seeing it there.
Okay, so right over here is we have, there's the road just isn't ever completed. The sidewalks stop here and here. And so this is the one that everybody's walking up this hill of this neighborhood. And it's causing problems because you can't cross the street. You can't get across here. It's kind of probably the most, at least in the time that I've been here and what I've heard from other people, one of the most reported issues we have.
To the left or north is unopened right of way. So it's almost like a driveway cut here. And then it's got vertical curb
right here.
Each ends of the sidewalk. There's no ramp at all on it. And it just needs to be a continuation of the sidewalk.
So what I have to do here is I've got to reprofile the entire intersection, raise this, chase that a little bit ways down, flatten out these two crossing points here and put in ADA compliant ramps in 3 locations and complete the sidewalk. So it's pretty extensive work to address this. So and then we'd be pulling that $154,000 out of the street fund, which is basically our road preservation fund. So we'd redo this intersection, we'd redo the other intersection at Kitsap.
So how much is it to redo this intersection?
150.
It's 150 and the one at Sydney.
Oh,
Kitsap
it's
is-
combined. Yeah, 154,000 is the estimate combined for all the additional street in ADA and sidewalk improvements.
Wait, okay, so you said 150 for both projects or
Both locations.
for ADA?
The
Yeah.
ADA aspect of it, and that's 130 in sewer work in the street.
Yeah, the total project estimate is about 325,000 for all of it. So my thought on how we would do this is, this is a emerging thing. It's something we have to address from the sewer side. We'd throw these other things into it. That kind of takes care of the ADA side of the house for some time. And then I would defer the Lippert repairs until 2022. We'd started the design on that, which has an advantage because we get quite a bit more money in the next year in 2022 than we have this year. And then I would go ahead and have a smaller pavement repair project. We're planning to focus the crew's efforts on patching, and we'd also do I'd contract out about $150,000 worth of work for a contractor to come in and do some of that work too. So we'll still see quite a bit of pavement repair happening this year. That's what we give up.
And the emergent need is, if you haven't driven Sydney lately coming to the north, there's a sinkhole. The concrete panel is 14 inches deep and it's sunk about 3 inches. It's cracked and the panel's sinking. We've got a sinkhole and we've TV'd it, and the root cause is this failed sewer line that's probably 9 feet down in the street.
So here's the picture.
Yeah, you can see that depression.
It's like at least 3 inches here, right?
Yeah.
So that's, we really don't know what's under there.
Wow.
It's something we need to take care of.
Well, we
Nothing-
know that
Nothing good.
it's a failing brick and mortar manhole from 1895 and some clay tile pipe probably that was lined once. So we're going to get in, do some sewer repairs and get this area stabilized.
So anyway, that's my plan.
Okay, so is the ask, or you're looking for a consensus that we defer Lippert from this year to 2022, and that we use the intersection there at DeKalb and Harrison and Sydney and Kitsap as our ADA retrofit this year? And
Correct.
that we take care of the sewer issue out there on Kitsap. But for transportation, what you're really asking us is, do we want to move forward with deferring Lippert and taking care of this ADA compliance? Am I hearing that right, Chris?
That's exactly it.
Okay. So how does the committee feel about that?
I'm good with that. I think we need to, like we were told a while ago, demonstrate our ADA retrofit program. Chris, you said that this would take care of our ADA retrofit needs for a bit. How long do we get to wait before we are obligated to really start looking at another ADA retrofit?
So I think the important thing we'll do this year, and we haven't talked about this much, but one of the things we didn't do last year that we're supposed to do this year is do our ADA transition plan update. And so what we're trying to do is just kind of like what we have with the city safety program, where the state has a bunch of money they get from the federal government. They say, hey, we're going to take care of our worst issues across the state. And that's kind of a risk management thing. So we'll be in a position where we can say, if we do a project every couple of years, we're prioritizing and we're addressing our worst issues. So people can't say, hey, you're not doing anything. We have kind of,
Yeah, we're not jeopardizing ourselves. Okay.
There's no hard fast percentage or number per year that we're having to meet. We're just making progress on ADA, which we have been over the years with the private development we've been bringing in, and with Tremont. I mean, we are in our inventory, we are bringing in ADA compliant curb ramps and sidewalks. This is just, we want to continue to do that.
And it
Thank
kind of fits with our conversation we had last year where we talked about, hey, we want to focus those efforts near parks. We have the park up there on the hill. And another one we looked at was, well, when the county campus develops, we want to make sure we're tracking that and getting, you know, around these government campuses, getting all the ramps upgraded as those projects get built, and do something around City Hall. So those are all things we had talked about.
A lot of people ride that foot ferry and travel to court.
Right. Jay, did you have input?
You know, the only thing I wanted to add is I think we all agree that we have more needs than we do have funds, and we need to address the issues as they come up. And I think these two are issues that trump other ones throughout the city, unfortunately. So I concur.
Okay, and just, Chris, help me understand, the sewer piece you're estimating is 130,000.
158,000, and that does not include tax. So the storm and the street, I'm including tax in those estimates because that's the way the state regs are. So we include tax on materials, but we don't pay tax on labor and equipment and other things because they're road and they're exempt. But for the utility, we have to pay the sales tax.
I do worry about what we'll find underneath, as Mark said, that you know, God knows from 1895 or whatever is under there.
Well,
And
we
then
do know that it's an old brick manhole, so if that price includes replacing the manhole, the pipe down there, we've TV'd it over the years. I think it's actually been lined, so I think we're gonna, by putting in the new manhole and then improving the side sewer connections that come in through there, I think I'm pretty hopeful that we've got a good idea of what we're going to find on the sewer repair and how we're going to do that with a saddle manhole, and then finishing it off, since we're going to have pretty good sized hole. Now we are going to have to shut this road down for a certain amount of time and then detour traffic around up over to Seattle and back around.
It'd be the snow route down Kitsap and up and around the park. is
Yeah.
what we're doing.
Yeah.
This will have big impacts because we're going to have to close the road for periods of time.
Yeah.
We do that, you know, especially with the concrete paving. We can't just do that in a couple of days and open up the road. It's got to sit for a better part of a week. So.
Remember too, 2 years ago, you authorized the purchase of the TV camera, and the crews have been up here extensively over the last few months, TVing all these sewer lines from that manhole that's out in front of my house. So going down the hill. So they've got a pretty good idea of what needs to be repaired there, but it is all a big, thick concrete street and a whole bunch of clay. That's for certain.
Okay, Chris, I'd like to go back and finish my question. Both intersections, is that 154,000 a piece or total for both of them?
Total. Yeah, so the way I've broken the 325,000 down is I have a 154 for street, 4 for storm, and 158 for sewer.
Okay.
And then there's that tax issue, which those are all, but they total 325.
But the 150, the 154 for the intersections, Lippert was going to cost us 300,000, wasn't it?
It was over that, but we're not.
So we'll have extra left, is what I'm saying, for other preservation projects.
We will, and that would be the plan. The plan would be to get this project bid, find out what the bids come in, and then right after that, put out another contract to get pavement repair in higher priority areas around the city.
Okay, perfect.
We'll have to coordinate with operation and maintenance because we're going to do a lot of pavement repair with them too. So we're going to have to pick the areas that need more traffic control and farm that out, and then have them do the other areas.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Okay, well, that's the end of what I had for you tonight. Just wanted to touch base and make sure that I was heading down the right path.
Rob, did you see my email?
Yeah.
Do we want to just save that for another day?
We could talk about that here. I mean, gosh. We don't want to put metal arms there because we're going to do a roundabout there eventually. So we just got to replace the wooden poles.
Well, I know that's what we had hoped from the beginning was they're rotten. We were just going to replace the poles. But once we found out that they have ITS on it, all the ADA push buttons and stuff, that's why my spidey senses from my ADA training told me that we can't just do that. So that's when I reached out to the consultant and they confirmed what I had thought, which is, no, you can't do that. So
this is the Walmart intersection, traffic light, the poles, the county allowed Walmart to put wooden poles in that are attached to the existing light poles, and they're rotten now.
So it just starts the whole trickle down effect of, well, if you replace the poles, then you got to replace all the ITS, ADA, and then you got to do the curb ramps, and you got to do the crosswalks, and now you're just doing an intersection. We've got a roundabout plan for that intersection. So anyway, I'm going to do some more research.
They're emergency repairs, Mark.
I know I might go to FEMA. Anyway, it's literally just been yesterday. Some photos that showed those bolts through the poles on the guys are literally pulling out of the wood. So
We need a structural coating.
yeah. Anyway, it's
Bondo.
it's a long-term interim fix that, in my opinion, should have been approved with somebody like Walmart for that entire development. Should have been a full-blown intersection rather than just using existing streetlights to put mast arms on and some ADA push buttons. So we're the recipient of poor decision making.
Scott, we're shaming you right now.
No, we're not. He wasn't involved.
I don't work for Public Works.
Touche.
So more to come on that.
More to come, yeah.
Another crisis. But we're gonna have a windstorm and the traffic light will come down. Then we'll just have to put a pole in.
Or we just make it a four-way stop. Just put stop signs up.
Yeah.
That'll get Walmart's attention.
Yeah.
Yeah, they get a lot of people's attention.
Maybe they'll volunteer to put up temporary lights until the roundabout gets built in 10 years.
Is it the lights that are issue and not the street lights?
It's the poles. The problem is they put, instead of putting a metal pole and a metal arm that you see most lights on, they just did the wire hung lights on old wooden telephone poles. It's a little bit like the marquee conversation.
Which is for another day. Is there anything else that we want to discuss this evening?
Hefty agenda tonight and a lengthy executive session with a number of items. So I apologize in advance.
Thank you. Well, this gives us a little bit of time before the council meeting. So we'll go ahead and adjourn and look forward to seeing everyone in a few minutes.